Hello, everyone, and welcome to Whale FM Makers Place edition. In this show, we talk with incredible creatives blazing new ground and exploring the endless possibilities of Web3 and the NFT movement. My guest today is award winning generative artist and data sculptor Brendan Dawes, whose new collection, Collisions, explores perception, the emergence of AI, and what it means to be an artist in the age of artificial intelligence. Brendan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here, and especially with the whale community who have been very kind to me over the years. And it's good to be back on Maker's Place after I think almost 2 years since my last drop. So yeah, excited to be here.
It's that, yeah, we definitely have a history, obviously, someone that's very prevalent in our vault, which was curated by Whale Shark at one point in time before the DAO actually had a lot of input as well and continued to be big fans of your work and all that you do. And for anyone that's not familiar with kind of your journey through art and making it to the NFT space, would you mind just giving us a quick synopsis for someone that might be tuning in for the first time?
Yeah, sure. Try not to bore anyone to death. Yeah, I'm not traditionally trained in art in any way. I left school, when I was 16. I became a news photographer for a while, and I'll just glance over these things. And then didn't really like. I did that for a couple of years, and then I became a DJ, and then I trained as a sound engineer for a while in Manchester in the UK during the rave scene, and then got a record contract for a while in Liverpool. Made no money, and then eventually needed a proper job to pay the mortgage. So worked in a factory and ended up being in a factory for 8 years, making electronic circuits, but mostly drilling holes in fiberglass with like CNC drills. But all the time I was programming, so I was coding since the early 80s. I think 1981 was the first time I'd written computer code. So all the time I was as a hobby, I was making computer programs and coding and teaching myself. And then in 96, I got a job in a web design company as a way to get out of the factory, because I knew that it was kind of this dead end job, and I thought I was going to be there a month, and I was there 8 years. So I ended up getting this web design job, and that was, that kind of changed my life. I was there for 4 years, rose to be an art director there. We went from like 5 people to like 16 or something. Then I went to New York for a time and met amazing people. I always say my career has been predicated on the generosity of others. So it's through the people I've met. And all the time I was coding and trying to understand coded arts, generative arts. I then joined another agency that I co-founded in Manchester and was there for 12 years. During that time, while I was making my own work as well, I got an email from the Museum of Modern Art in New York. It's in 2007, and they'd seen something I'd made called Cinema Redux, and they wanted to put it in a show they were doing called Designing the Elastic Mind, and it then went in that show in 2008. And then it was acquired for the permanent collection in the same year. And then I was in 2 other MoMA shows. So yeah, that kind of was the start of it, really, thinking, oh, maybe I could, you do this for a living and pursue the idea of generative and coded arts as a thing as a practice. Yeah, and then I did a lot of client work, working for giant brands, huge brands and that kind of thing, and that was that was really the start of it. And then NFTs in 2020, and then never looked back from there, really.
So much about that's amazing, and I've heard this story so many times, but I love that you were cutting records and touring in the rave scene, and you were like, "There's no money in this, so
Yeah,
let me play around with some other stuff," and ended up in a factory drilling fiberglass for 8 years.
yeah,
You really, turn to your art. But one thing that I was always impressed with is, talk about always playing with coding, and I don't get to say this often. I like to pull up people's socials when we're talking with
yeah,
them, and learning more about them, and I can literally pull up your GitHub, right, and see
yeah,
your commits and your contributions going way back until GitHub had
yeah.
initially started. So that's an impressive feather in the cap I don't get to mention often. So super dope. Thank you for sharing that with us. But so obviously that progression happened. You found your way into the art scene. I believe David from Known Origin was
Yeah,
tapping you like, "Hey man, you make this incredible stuff you have for
yeah,
so long. Why don't you explore what we're doing over here in this NFT space?" And you did, and the rest is history, right? So lots of accolades, obviously esteemed collectors, really seeing what you come to the table with. And really what I love about it personally is kind of your experimentation through the years, long before NFTs, just all the different things that you were doing to take the tools and what was at your disposal and just experiment and do different things. And so with
yeah.
that, I think sometimes it's hard for me to describe, your work to people. I'd love to hear it in your own words. How would you characterize your creative art style and your approach?
Well, I think there's, and I've only recently realised this. I think the consistent theme that runs through my work is from those, those record making days of cutting up things that already existed. From I was using samplers, I was using tape and splicing tape together to make records in the style of Cold Cut and Steinskin and people like this. And I think that's what I continue to do now. I'm interested in taking from different sources and trying to remix them into new forms. Back then, it was music and audio. Now it's visuals and using computer code and other things to do that. And that's why I'm interested in lots of different things. You talk about experimentation. Um, it's the idea of play, of being, I'm just very curious about things. And so my style kind of changes over the years, but the DNA that makes it up is this idea of using essentially, a bit like ready-mades and, which Marcel Duchamp obviously coined that term. But it's something that I love to think that I use ready-mades and then twist them into new forms that maybe make us look at the world in a different way or question things in the world, or I'm able to tell stories about my life, or and things that are have been important to me in my life. So that's the kind of consistency. I'm not really. Sometimes you see these collectors that you know tell people that they should have a consistent style, and I think art is about being able to do what the hell you want to do. And if you want to go off and make, something that's completely different to how you've previously done stuff, then you should be allowed to do that. And if you look at, I went to the Picasso Museum in Barcelona, and it was amazing to see, his early work compared to people know his Cubist period, but if you look at everything he went through, it's amazing, and it's all of it is really brilliant. From theatre design, costume design, there's simple pencil sketches, all this kind of stuff. So I think all artists are just curious by their very nature, and that's one of the joys of making art is you don't know what you're going to be doing next week. So and now now I'm using AI is really exciting. So and I've weirdly my first NFT that Whale Shark bought used AI back in 2020. So it's not like it's completely new to me. But the levels of things you can do now. So that's part of my tool set really, and I have lots of different tools, and I love to combine them in different ways, I think.
Yeah, that's super dope. There was a write up in our blog, I think about a year ago, maybe a little bit more, and there was a particular quote that really resonated with me. And our writer wrote that your intrinsic ability to look at things outside of yourself with open eyes and heart is what enables you to integrate technologies like AI and machine learning and coding with fine art for pieces that really evoke strong human thought and emotion. Whereas a lot of times people can find some of these things abstract, right? Like, and not
Mm.
necessarily the connection, like the humanity that you bring it and the way that you approach it for experimentation is kind of unique in how people make that connection to your work. And I found that personally, true to the way that I experience it.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
but you bring up a lot of interesting things, especially with regard to experimentation. I think that things have, from the Thing-O-Matic 10 years ago or whenever it was, right, to the sculptures and the algorithmic renderings, and even we were talking about composable NFTs,
Yeah.
not long ago, right? So
Yeah.
experimentation's always been the lane. You talked about AI. How have your creative endeavors evolved over the past year in particular? Because I think, I feel like we've had a really good snapshot of, a lot of the work at the onset, the first year or two of the NFT movement.
Mhm.
And I feel like over the past year, I've seen you do a lot of new things, or at least relative to what's been released and minted, right? Obviously, you're
Yeah.
doing crazy stuff. When I look back in your catalog, like all kinds of crazy stuff. But
Yeah.
over the past year, you mentioned AI. And we
Yeah.
saw you playing around with that, like on Twitter and on Insta, right?
Yeah.
AI is obviously part of it, but I feel like there's been other things you just decided, hey, I'm going to go down these different paths. How has this evolved over the past year in particular? What are the things you're really exploring, incorporating, and experimenting with?
Well, I think I'm into in reinventing myself quite a bit. So when I first discovered Houdini back in 2019, I did my first project with it like a month after I got into it. Um, it was the reason was for self-development because I wasn't really happy with where I was at. Um, I kind of got a bit, I felt I was getting complacent. So, I learned this thing called Houdini and that kind of sent me off down that path. And now um, I've really started to go deep into AI, with stable diffusion and things like that. Um, because I think we can be limited by our own imaginations and our own knowledge and the things we know. And the promise of AI for me is the idea of this collaborator that can bring new thoughts, new ideas, new paths into an artistic practice. So at the beginning of the year, I started to try and go deep into it and explore how it can not supplant my own creative, what skills or whatever, is more about augmenting the skills. The way I'm using it is that I'm still generating often sculptural forms, but now I can augment it with the AI, that has been prompted or trained on images or whatever. Um, and then with Stable Diffusion, it's particularly good because it's all open source, so you can get down into the nitty gritty and the nuts and bolts of it. So as you can see, from the stuff you're showing, I was playing around with. I'm not really interested in creating. You see a lot of AI stuff where they're trying to. There's either mythical scenes or creating things from real life, none of which particularly interest me. And I also have to have a concept of why does that thing exist? What's the story? So I can't just like make a thing and then, what if it doesn't have any kind of meaning, then I can't really I can put it out into the world like on these Instagram things. They're just playful experiments that don't really mean anything. But the same way I'm interested in combinations. So I would combine, one thing that I'd tried on Instagram maybe, and then another thing, and then maybe think, oh, right, there's something interesting happening here. So let's explore what this is and what could it mean, and is there a story there? If there isn't a story there, then I'm not really particularly interested. I don't just want to make pretty things.
Right.
I don't want to make things that look like they've existed before. I think that's the promise for me. Is there was a great quote from Alan Moore, the legendary graphic novel author, and he said, art is your opportunity to make alternative realities. So that's what I want to do, and I think AI allows me to do that kind of on steroids, to really amplify it. And you can see
Right.
some of that. The stuff you're showing here is like, just some of it is just weird AI photography. That's that particular piece. I think looks very kind of like a Man Ray, kind of what you can imagine Man Ray doing that back in the 30s. So the surrealist photography has always been an interest of mine anyway. But so I was experimenting with these forms, but the stuff in the MakersPlace drop today is based on procedural forms that I've made, sort of fused with AI.
Yeah, would love to talk about that in just a moment, but I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you when I saw you playing around with this. I just really dug it because it was relatable, because a lot of us were doing it at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And just experimenting, especially when I saw you throwing into retro tech, which I know is kind of a hallmark of stuff you're interested in, and touches my geek sensibilities as well. I think Mongoose, you shared that perked your interest when you saw that also.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think what you're saying here and how you're using AI as a tool, uh, it resonates with a lot of people, I think, who are just starting to explore it and use it to explore that unknown. But I think also to help make sense of what we do know and what these machine learned models can generate based upon what they've already been taught.
Yeah.
You know, it's the synthesis isn't always what we expect it to be, and that can somehow feed back to you and help you understand something deeper.
Yeah, as you had shared in the past, right? Like you need to be looking for something to find something, right?
Yeah.
So by
Yeah.
playing with it, things evolve and thought processes and how it can come together. But you've been playing with AI for a long time, right? Prior to it becoming more accessible to mainstream,
Yeah.
you were messing around with it. In fact, MakersPlace recently had curated a dedicated AI generative art exhibit, of which you were part of with some of your pre-existing work
Yeah.
long before this. What are your thoughts on AI having become more accessible to mainstream? Like both from the perspective of the reaction from the traditional art world, and also from the reaction of creatives that may be a little bit apprehensive to see this, emerging.
Well, I guess that's the thing, and that's why I've made these images. Is that unfortunately we live in a world or a society that is very polarized. We used to have a place where we could discuss things, and we might have different opinions, but it would come from a place of respect. But unfortunately, a lot of the times now, when something comes out, people just they're so polarized, they just hate on it without really understanding it, and that happened with obviously NFTs. We know that from the whole ecological thing, which has now been sorted, and that's great. But also AI, the thing, oh, this is just ripping off other artists. And if you understand AI, you realize that while it is trained on, millions and millions of images, and you can, create something in the style of someone, it's not that straightforward. And it's not just that one use case. So I think AI generally And I've been doing a lot of research into it, reading a lot of books on AI and listening to a lot of lectures from people like Stuart Russell at Berkeley and people like that. AI will absolutely. Stuart Russell believes it's the next step in human evolution. It's no bigger than that. So I think it will change every aspect of our lives, for the good and for the bad. If your job is to make bad hotel art, you might want to start looking for another job. So there's that. But also, I don't think there'll be a single human being in a call center within 2 years. And then, but then you think, well, call centers are just a terrible experience. You ring a call center here now, you're half an hour on the phone before anyone answers. So I welcome AI driven call centers that will actually sound like a human being. Bring it on, because the phone will be answered straight away. It's great. So there's advantages, but there's also there's a tsunami of job loss that I think is going to come our way. So how do we cope with all that? How do we cope with the mental wellness of people losing their jobs? All this kind of stuff. All these things are going to permeate. And then you've got what you think is trivial, right? So things like TikTok filters. That we've all seen those filters that make you look 30 years younger, and they're quite amazing. These have psychological implications for everyone. You're suddenly looking at yourself in real time from 30 years ago, and that can trigger, what have I done with my life and all these kind of things. And the same with suddenly everyone looks beautiful and all this kind of stuff. So that stuff is not going to go away, and we need to work out how we're going to deal with it. And in respect of art, you've just seen Claire Silver just announced that she's doing an AI exhibit at the Louvre, and so the institutions are taking it very seriously.
Yeah, I think that's
Brendan,
pretty notable.
Brendan's frozen at the moment. Hopefully we can get him back in. Mongoose, did you see that announcement from Claire Silva?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great thing to see in general, as we're seeing these major institutions of art and ideas starting to rethink how they interact. Oh, maybe Brendan's back.
Oh, was it me who disappeared, or?
You did, but you're back. So, no, you know what?
Yeah.
That was the AI who was. They were not happy with us tapping in.
Yeah. It was closing me down before I, said anymore.
Right.
Yeah, funny.
Well, you had mentioned Claire Silva heading to the Louvre.
Yeah, so that's an incredibly big moment, because when Claire started doing all that stuff, she got a lot of abuse. And now she's stuck with it, and now she's got this collection at the Louvre, and people taking her very, very seriously. So it's the next big thing for sure. So let's see where it goes. I'm excited to see where it goes. Like I said, there's a lot of implications, and we have to figure out how it's going to work exactly, and I'm sure we're going to be in a place where, people like companies like Netflix, whole shows will be made with AI, it won't involve human beings. We'll get to that point. The next Squid Game could be all AI. 'Cause if you look at Netflix, they've got a business model where they're spending crazy amounts of money on content. There's only so many subscribers in the world. So they have to find ways to cut costs, and AI will be one of those ways. So it will, it will impact every part of our lives for sure.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you, and I think there's a lot of people within our community that share the same sentiment with regards to the outputs, right? That really it's looking for the meaning behind them. I just think personally, I think it's a little bit nuanced in, you know, how we want to measure that or how we want to account for that. But we have years to discuss it, right? This evolution's happening, although quicker than probably we anticipated. It'll probably be very quickly becoming ubiquitous and part of our lives. So talk to me about collisions. Collisions is the manifestation of all of these ideas and this exploration. And, you know, you talked to kind of the discussion or the debate around the environment and how that kind of led you down the path of kind of taking disparate things in combination to explore this. Could you talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. It is exactly that. It's a kind of a visual response to the idea of, let's backtrack a little bit. There's an amazing book by James Bridle called Ways of Being, which is about our understanding on our place in the world with things that are more than human, or, you know, the animal world, the plant world, etc., networks, all kinds of networks, not just digital networks. So that had a kind of like profound impact on me. And you know, you realize that, you know, human beings aren't the top intelligence. You know, we might think we are, but we're not. So, you know, we're all as he describes it, we're all entangled in the world. And I've always, as you've said, you know, always used lots of disparate, weird things in my work. I'm interested in lots and lots of things. So I wanted to create a work that kind of created these strange objects that were a fusion of many different things, from biological things that were in the world, from slime mold and then all the way to like communication satellites, consumer electronics, lots of different things like that. So, and it creates these like strange objects that are they mechanical, are they organic, or are they a machine or digital? They're kind of a combination of all those things, and they were made from. So there's like a procedural model that I created, which is why they kind of have similar shapes, and then I used AI to augment that along those themes that I've mentioned. But I think it's the idea of it's a celebration really of the ability and the joyfulness of being able to combine lots of things to create something new, and how we should always be open to working with other things outside of our own realm, working with other people, other organisms, whatever it is, to try and create new forms that might inspire something, you know, might inspire a cure for cancer, or not saying these images do that, but, you know, the new ways of thinking, inspire new ways of thinking to journey down that we might not have been through before. So, you know, and these images, so there's going to be 12 in total. This is volume 1. And so they're released in 4 images in each volume. There are a series of 1-of-1s. Each one comes with a print, which will be signed by me, which I will ship from this very room. So yeah, they're kind of unique experiments, really, in kind of my newfound love of AI, but my continued love of what creativity means to me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. A great comment from the chat from SidXO, our resident artist, actually calling them industrial organisms. I thought that was a good,
I love that,
good characterization of them. We may need to send you a royalty payment over there, Sid. So this drop actually just went live on MakersPlace, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I believe that's 6 p.m. UTC.
Yeah.
My math gets a little fuzzy here. So 4 1-of-1 pieces are available for a 24-hour power auction. Looks like there's a reserve there as well. Each one comes with a signed print, which is super dope. And I believe these are on your own contract. Is that right?
Yeah, they're all through a manifold contract. So MakersPlace have done a fantastic job of integrating manifold into the platform. It's something that myself and MakersPlace were talking about last year. Because we were going to do a drop last year, and I just didn't get around to it. And I mentioned at the time, it would be really cool if we could do I could mint on my manifold contract, and it could be on MakersPlace. And I think at the time they were going to find out a way to do that. And then we kind of delayed that drop. I can't remember what it was going to be at the time. I think I was still working out what the idea was. And then, I saw that, I think it was a month ago or whatever, that MakersPlace had put this system in place. So I was excited about doing that, and then had a chat with MakersPlace about it. And and here we are with the drop. Like I said, it's been almost 2 years since the last drop I did with them. So yeah, the ability to, I think that the whole provenance of being able to have your own contract is really nice. Collectors really love it. So it's nice to be able to integrate it all into one thing. So MakersPlace, and they've done a fantastic job of doing that. The integration is really seamless. So yeah, I'm excited to continue on that route with it.
Yeah, we're definitely fans of it. Nothing's more frustrating than recently I was able to land a very cool piece from a creator that I really dig and follow on a different platform, pulled it out into my own wallet, only to find that there was zero information on who the creator was in the metadata, right? Unless I throw it back to the platform, or someone's really good at sleuthing, it would trace it back. So, the provenance, having a direct line to you is a wonderful thing. But also I feel like, and this is me personally, but I think some people agree with this, the way the tech is leveraged by people is as much part of the art as what we're seeing visually, to me, with creators like yourselves, like Pac, for example. I feel like the utilization of the contract is part of the art. So this just, for me, adds a lot to it and is symbolic of a lot of things. So super dope you're able to do that. I hesitate to ask people this question because I know sometimes a lot of creatives want it to be really left up to the imagination of people taking in the works. But if you want, we could look at the individual pieces if there's anything you wanted to call out within it. Or would you rather it be, hey, you guys look at this thing, if it's an industrial organism, whatever it is, you figure it out?
No, that I made a few of these objects, and when I was looking at which are going to be the 12, I realized that there was some of them that had these kind of strange sinewy branches coming from them that looked like they were part of a group. So all 12 have been chosen for the coming year. I think also that there is differences though. So this one in particular, it's very circular. So I did a whole load of them that had these circular things within them. There's another one that is more angular. It was hard to kind of categorize them in a way because they kind of, I didn't want, I was saying, oh, well, that one looks organic, but then it's also slightly mechanical. So I couldn't really describe it. Which is probably a good thing, to be honest. I think Sid's description of industrial organic, or whatever he said, was a good explanation. But I think if you're doing work that kind of it's hard to describe, then it's probably you're probably on a good path. It's probably a good thing. So yeah, I try not to. I think what I always like is people see different things in not just this work but any work, and then they say to me, oh, it looks like so and so, or I saw this in it. The one on the left there, the bottom left, looks to me almost like some kind of strange organic spaceship. There's something particularly organic. It looks like it's inflated on the left almost,
Right.
which I really like. And the thing is, you could imagine, is that microscopic or is it huge? Don't
That's
know.
exactly that's it. When I looked at this, I said, I feel like I could look through a microscope and be surprised at this
Yeah,
world that's in there, or this could be absolutely mammoth floating in space in a
yeah,
science fiction film, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so I love that juxtaposition that you just you
yeah,
characterize as well.
yeah. And I always say I try and leave space in the work for people to bring themselves into it. So, that's the kind of thing that I'm interested in. I don't try and prescribe this is exactly this and this image is exactly that. I want them to make their own mind up about it, really. Yeah. So it's certainly a stranger one, but I think a lot of my work is kind of a bit weird. So, that's the kind of stuff that I'm into.
Right. Well, I mean, it's like we talked about the continued evolution, and personally,
Yeah,
I'm always looking for the weird thing, right?
yeah,
That's what I aspire to collect oftentimes. Um, a great comment from Troublescape, and I'll paraphrase here, but this is from our Discord, is that your idea about using AI because our imagination is limited and it can improve on it is something that really resonates with him. And I think
right.
that that's a concept, a lot of people think of AI as just duplicating something that exists,
Yeah,
and you kind of taking and using it to expand the boundaries of what's possible in creation, much like Sasha Stiles does with her
yeah,
own works, with having a partner
poetry.
to collaborate with,
Yeah,
etc. in her works is really cool. From a
yeah.
process standpoint, can you walk us through a little bit on your workflow with these? Because I know so much goes into just your regular data sculpting, and then how do you then layer in the AI?
So I have so I create like these I won't say, is it a model? It's not really a model. I don't know. It's a structural sculptural form in Houdini. So, and it's kind of colorful, and it's like lots of strands that emanate from like an horizon almost. Um and they kind of swirl round, um and it's actually part of an animation. So, and the reason I do that is so I can then choose out, oh, that frame is particularly interesting. So, that I kind of freeze that moment in time. And then using stable diffusion, I take that image as a kind of a starting point, with the image to image feature in stable diffusion. And then I play around with various prompts that are based on the kind of things that, as I mentioned, that I'm exploring. So whether it's satellites and things like that, but there's also some other things that stylistically, from a lighting point of view, or that kind of thing, or the contrast, or some sort of cues about how it should look. Because sometimes I do this stuff and I go, it looks terrible, So there's a lot. What you don't see is like hundreds of images that I just threw in the trash can, that don't make the cut. I think that's actually probably an important point. Curation and editing I think is going to be a big part of this kind of movement. So you could make potentially thousands of images, but I have to be very critical on what is actually good. And I think generally society needs to be more critical on what is actually good, to be honest. So I think we should, to have the bar up here is not a bad thing. And I'm very self-critical of my own work. So, and oftentimes I think, oh, that looks good. And then the next day I think, this is terrible. So I'll just, delete it, or, put it in a folder never to be used again. So, Yeah, it takes a while to get it right. And I think with collections is interesting, or is it a series of works? They need to look like a collection. They need the collection becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And you'll see when all 12 are revealed, you'll see that they work as a whole. So whether someone will collect the whole thing, I don't know. But yeah, that's really important for me. It can't be too eclectic. It has to work as a fused concept, working as a whole thing. And they can all look, they can all look different, but you have to be able to look at it and go, oh, that's from the same series. I can see that. So that's important for me. I hope that explains a little bit about how I get into it.
Yeah, definitely. It brought me to another question, though. You segmented this into volumes. Is there a key feature we could expect as these progress? Like, is volume 2 going to be slightly green? Like, is there a differentiation or evolution to occur here, or did you just say these are the best 12, but I can only release them to you in piecemeal so you can take it all in?
Yeah, no, there's some different forms start to appear. So I think there's some more angular, forms. You'll see, but this one is much more sinewy, and then you'll hopefully see where it goes. But yeah, they definitely evolve. And then, of course, what's interesting is you could use these to then make descendants of these images, and that's where it gets really interesting. Or you could fuse the two.
Or you could start training an AI on these particular images.
Then you'd have children of these, and that's something I might do later on. But I'm already looking at that. So you might have a collector who goes, well, I've got that image, and then I've also these ones were descendants of that image, and that becomes quite interesting as a mechanic, I think.
Incredibly interesting.
Very cool.
You could fuse the two. You could have two parents that then make a child, from the DNA essentially of the two parent images.
Yeah. I loved, so for so long, and the onset of kind of the NFT movement, talking about the possibilities that the underlying tech provided as opportunities for the art to evolve, etc. And now we have these new manifestations on the other side, on the layering with the AI and stuff that can happen. And I just feel like, once again, my head has smoke coming out of my ears at the various possibilities of what could occur, right? When you combine those various mechanics, and certainly a creative like yourself that likes to explore those things. I'm very intrigued to see where this continues to evolve. But with that evolving, definitely you've been doing over the past year and over your whole career, Brendan, and it's really cool to be part of it and to be able to talk to you about it as it happens. So we appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. Any plans on deck to create in any new medium specifically? I know you're always trying to try new stuff, and it may be something you want to keep tight to the vest, but we're always intrigued to hear what else you're working on.
Yeah, no, there's two main things. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but that thing behind me, that's a 3D print. So there's 3 of those, which will be projection maps in Barcelona. So you can see it there, kind of. And that is a series of 3 works that is going to be an exhibition called Digital Impact, which will be in Barcelona from April 27th for 3 months. It's a group exhibition with Rafik Anadol, Random International, Joel Snaith, Field, Universal Everything, and other amazing people. And so what you're looking at there, I've done a series of 3 sculptures. I got the passenger traffic from Barcelona Airport during the pandemic. So this one's a big one because it's before the pandemic hit. So it's all like lots of people, swirly. And then the other one, the year after, when the pandemic hit, it's like half the size of that, and it's nowhere near as crazy. And then 2021, it's sort of a mid-size between the two, and it starts to expand again. And then that is projection maps from the ceiling. They're presented in this hemisphere that's semi-transparent. Each artist has their own hemisphere, and so there's 3 works in there. There's a projector. I shared some stuff on my Instagram earlier on stories that I was testing. In fact, this laptop I'm speaking to you on is actually sat, so you can see with the 3D prints there, but this is sat on the computer that will drive it all. So there's an M1 Mac Mini that will drive it, and all this data flows around because it's quite dark in there. So it'll flow around this thing. So there's that. So that's like my next one in April. So just getting, it's pretty much done. So we're going to be shipping all this stuff next week. And then I go out there in April for the install, and then I go back out there for the opening night. So there's that. And then the other big one is probably the biggest thing I'll do this year. Probably one of the biggest things of my career. So I'm working with Gary Huswit, who did the Helvetica documentary, Objectified documentaries, documentary filmmaker. He just did one on the legendary industrial designer Dieter Rams. He's doing a documentary on Brian Eno, and we've been working together for the last 3 years, me and Gary, on the idea of a piece of software that is a generative film engine. So Gary's making this documentary. He's got 400 hours of footage that he's digitizing. And so that's all moving along. And then for the generative film part, we're presenting it at, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say yet. I probably can't. Probably better not say. But it's a big deal. An event in October where Brian Eno will also be performing as well. But I think they're about to do the press release for it. But anyway, for that project, so I've created this software that creates this, basically this kind of, it's not a documentary, it's like an art experience, all from Brian Eno's work, but it can run forever and will never be the same twice. So you just sit there and soak it all in. And this thing, we're going to present it for a week, and it will never stop for the 168 hours I think it's going to run for.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's probably the biggest thing I'm doing. Might be the biggest thing I've ever done. So it's also quite scary as well. So yeah, and then there's some posters coming out for it, which will be out next month. So some limited edition posters. So I work with Michael C. Plass, who's this amazing graphic designer, studio build in Yorkshire, here in the UK. They're amazing graphic designers, and they've done the typography for it. I've done the artwork for it, and that's going to be edition of 4 posters, 100 edition each, physical prints. So yeah, so those are the things that are occupying me at the minute. Yeah.
Super cool. Some commentary from the Discord. Wes says he supported the Dieter Rams doc on Kickstarter, so he's very intrigued about the collab you're discussing. He also had an interesting question. We'll come back to that just before we wrap up here, because I know we have some questions from the community as well. I wanted to get your thoughts really quick on cross-chain NFT exploration. I know I've seen you had a couple of drops on FX Hash that were very cool. I know you have some stuff on Tez. Also, you're always experimenting, obviously, now with your own contract. Ordinals are a thing people are definitely playing with now. What are your thoughts on particular chains, people trying to work the tech in various ways? Any strong feelings or inclinations either way?
Well, I'm a friend of. I like all these things because I think they're new ways to explore, create, make things. I think it's great. I'm not an Ethereum Maxi or anything like that. FX Hash is an amazing platform. But it got me thinking, actually. Ordinals I don't really know that much about, you know, and I know it's quite complicated to do, but I think just the fact that is happening is interesting. But here's the thing, right, with the FX Hash, the art blocks, they are, even though they're all built on essentially processing JS, they are platform specific. So, you know, those works have to be, you know, shown on a, you know, they have proprietary tech that is, you know, the way the works are generated and randomized and stuff. The same with art blocks. No one has yet come up with a JPEG for real-time generative work, a format. I'm not talking about JavaScript or anything like that, because when they implement these things, they have to be on specific platforms. So no one's come up with the equivalent of a JPEG for real-time generative work. And the thing is, you would have to be able to code in it, or maybe it would interpolate no matter what it is. It would be a container for that. I'd be interested to see, you know, what that is. And these are the kind of things that keep me awake at night or talk to people about, is why is there no JPEG for real-time generative work that works everywhere? So there's that. But as for the platforms, yeah, I think they're fascinating. Yeah, I've done a couple of things on FX Hash, but I kind of hate JavaScript. So it takes me a lot to go, JavaScript time again then. You know, it's kind of, I don't know, I don't find it enjoyable. And, you know, when I'm using Houdini and things like that, I enjoy it. So I don't enjoy making things in JavaScript, or I enjoy things in processing because I still have a lot of love for that software. You know, it kind of was the basis for pretty much everything I've ever done. So yeah, you know, I'm all for all of these, and I'm fascinated by, you know, the amazing work that goes on these things, and the ecosystem I think is amazing.
Very cool. I know I was fortunate to see you experimenting a little bit on Tez, and was just excited because I know the things that you like to try out leveraging the tech. But I'm with you. JavaScript reminds me of sleepless nights in college. That's what it reminds me of. So not a fan of JavaScript myself, but I'll muddle my way through it if I have to for something. It's not easy for me though. A couple of questions from the community I'd love to run by you before we let you go, Brendan, if you have a couple of minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Someone wanted to know, for the collisions pieces, did they start out as 3D generation in origin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they are. They're 3D forms. Yeah, absolutely.
That was from SidXO. Another question or / comment from Wes is, he wonders if you have any further plans to develop or update Kennedy, your moment documenting social media. Yeah.
You know what? I was showing someone when I was in Dubai. They were asking, you know, what I did and stuff, and we got talking about iPhone apps, and said, "Oh, I made this thing called Kennedy," and I showed him, and then, you know, obviously he tried to download it, and I think it's disappeared from the store because I deleted it for ages. I don't know if it's still on there or not. But yeah, I definitely want to keep it alive because I still use it myself. And I think, I'm not sure if I've now got to rewrite it in Swift because it was all done in Objective-C, and I'm not sure if Apple demand all apps are now in Swift. So it would take, I just need to put the time in to do it. If I can find a way that I don't have to do that and still get it back on the App Store, I'll absolutely will. But that thing has a very, you know, I'm very proud of it. You know, and it was, everyone talked about it for a good week, which is a long time in the internet. So, you know, I am really proud of that thing because it kind of represents me because it's so ridiculously minimal. but quite unique in the way it captures memories. So yeah, definitely, I don't just want to let it die, that's for sure. It's just finding the time to do it.
Well, there's fans of the app excited
That's good.
at that news. I had a question for you. Obviously, pop culture and fond memories of your past are often inspiration for new collections sometimes. What can fans of your work expect next that's in this vein?
That's a good question. There's something I'm exploring with parking. It doesn't sound very exciting, but parking spaces at night, car parks, parking lots at night, I think are interesting spaces because they're like one thing in the day. They're a hive of activity, and and people go about their business, but then at night time they become kind of a bit more ominous. They become a different thing. I've always been fascinated by things that exist in the physical world. There was a famous photographer in San Francisco who did a whole series and it was about one particular park bench, and how that changed its use during the day and went into the nighttime. An amazing series of photographs. Unfortunately, I can't remember his name, but so I've always been fascinated by these things that we don't really notice, but how their use transmutes or changes dependent on the time of day. So, and I'm always interested. I like kind of directors like Nicholas Winding Refn and people like that, David Lynch. So the more they explore our kind of darker sides to suburbia and things like that. So I've got a few experiments that I've done using satellite imagery of parking lots and things like that. So that's probably something I want to explore and put out there.
Very interesting, especially trying to wrap my head around it, knowing it's nowhere near the creative places that you'll take it. I have another big brain question from the Discord. Maybe you could help me with this. I don't even know how to translate it correctly. Would the generative mime type be rewindable or recordable, or just continually generating?
The generative mime type or mime type, was that?
Yes.
Right. So the generative mime type. Say it again. I need to get my head around it.
Would the generative mime /type be rewindable or recordable, or just continuously generating?
It would be continuously. Well, I think it would do everything. All of those. I think it would be continuously. It would be real time. So it'd be. I think you might have different formats to it. So you might have one that's locked when you minted it, but it was it's generated in real time, but it was then locked. But also you might be able to then generate new things from it, and that might be controllable by the creator. I think it would need to do all of that and probably more. How this thing would work, by the way, because the problem is with stuff like that, you have to it would suggest that you have to code in a certain language, which then becomes essentially proprietary, right? Even if it's open source, you have to do it in a certain way. And my thought, because it's like a bigger meta thing, is like it's a container for real-time, generative work, and it just works no matter what you make it in. And it would work, by the way, it would work in 1,000 years. This is the other thing we need to get our head around. Some of these formats might not work in 1,000 years. You think, well, 1,000 years, who cares? But we need to have a long-term thinking. Right. So it's important that that's what's great about a JPEG. It's still working. It just works, doesn't it? It works on the first computers that could use it, and it still works now. So yeah, I don't know. I'll leave that thorny issue with someone else cleverer than me to solve.
It looks like they have some follow-up questions as well, but you're taking me down the rabbit hole, friends. We'll save those for some DMs, and we'll hit you with some other questions before we got to let you go. Another question we had that was DM'd to me was, what are some NFT projects or artists that you're currently a fan of at the moment? What's piquing your interest when you're out there in the Twitter sphere or looking at art?
Oh, wow. Well, there's loads of people, you know, Claire Silver, Mario Klingerman. I'm trying to think, you know, that all these names suddenly escape me. There's the two women. Oh my God, my mind's just gone blank. But yeah, I mean, Mario Klingerman's been doing AI stuff for a long time, and he's like for me the best there is. And I think his work is so interesting. You know, and obviously, you know, Rafik is doing great stuff and making giant inroads into institutions, which is fantastic. Joe Peasman, I think his work is so original. It's video, but there's just something about it that is slightly off in a good way that is, I think, quite unique. So that Joe Peasman's amazing. You know, so yeah, there's a few of the people that I'm interested, and Kevin Abosch, I think, you know, just doing really original commentary, not just the art, but the commentary on the whole ecosystem, the stuff he did with the open edition, which I managed to get one of. Mimo Atkins recently did an open edition, and it's really beautiful use of AI. It was a wave. That was fantastic. Yeah, there's lots. Like, you know, I see so much amazing stuff out there. You know, it's fantastic.
Well, thank you for sharing some cool stuff for a lot of our people tuning in to check out if you haven't seen them already. This will be the last question I have from the community I wanted to share with you. Someone asked, you're lauded by a wide swath of collectors and institutions. What would you say to artists who find themselves challenging connecting with the traditional art space?
Do you mean
it sounds like they're NFT? Yeah, it sounds like they're NFT native, and
Right.
with that, they're having difficulty navigating waters outside of the Twitter sphere, or what we traditionally consider NFT space.
Mm-hmm. I think the two worlds need to. I don't see why it has to be one or the other. For one, you know, people talk a lot about they were gatekeepers. Well, whitelists are gatekeepers and things. You know, we all have our gatekeepers. So, and obviously it was harder to get into that world. And I think what NFTs has done has obviously opened up that world to a lot of people that traditionally couldn't get in. I think you don't have to, you know, you can be a total, you know, you can be totally about the NFTs, and you don't have to enter that world, you know. And a lot of the things that are getting a lot of attention are, of course, with the likes of the Louvre or the likes of MoMA, or you know, being a Pace Gallery or something like that. But it doesn't have to be, you know. And there are maxis either way, I guess. I just like this idea that, you know, we can all. I'm kind of an optimist, and you know, we can all get along. You know, my own experience with, you know, I'm represented by Gazelle Art House in London since, you know, November 21, and you know, what people don't see is everything that goes on in the background with an art gallery. You know, the way they archive the work, the way they write about the work, the way they document the work, how they talk to collectors, how they talk to institutions, how they put a brochure together for your work, all this kind of stuff, the way they display it, all this kind of stuff. People don't see all that. They probably just see, oh, well, they do a gallery show and they whack it on a wall. You know, it's a lot more involved than that. So, you know, and they, the good galleries support your career. The good galleries are not just about trying to earn money very quickly from you. So the good galleries, it's a 5 to 10 year plan to work with you. So that's one of the advantages of being with a gallery. But you don't have to do it like that, and rules are being rewritten. And I don't think it's about just going back to how things were. That's always a danger with a lot of the traditional worlds getting involved. So I think there's things we can learn from each other for sure. New ways to do things. That's what I'm interested in. And I don't think we should dismiss each other's arguments out of hand, and maybe learn from each other. So, but I would say I get questions like, how do I get represented by a gallery? Or the thing is, just make good work. I would love to tell you that it's like, oh, you do this and then you hopefully have a friend who works in the gallery. It doesn't work like that. I didn't know anyone at Gazzelli. They approached me because I was constantly putting work out there, trying new things and trying to make a statement. It unfortunately, it comes down to that, trying to make work which you think deserves to exist. And it's hard, and you've got to be relentless, and it can get you down. And I'm not going to, say it doesn't or it's easy, but you've got to stick at it. And like I said, up until the age of 30, I worked in a factory, and last week I was at Art Dubai, so in a solo show. So, just keep at it is my main message.
Well, thank you so much for that unique context. Mongoose, were you chiming in there?
No, I just think that's such a great piece of advice for any artist of any type at any point in their career. Just keep going. You're obviously here to create for a reason, so just keep on doing that and try to get past all the other things that society throws at us, or family, friends, all these other expectations. If it's not your own, then it's not a core fundamental aspect of you. And and I think also something you mentioned earlier too, Brendan, knowing what you like and knowing what you don't like when you're working through your works, and being able to identify that, I think is very important. But also to be able to say, hey, maybe I'm not going to delete this, I'm going to put it in a folder and maybe come back to it later. And that's something I'm always very curious about. Absolutely. How artists look back at their work that they've created from different points, and how would you approach a rave today if NFT NYC wanted you to do something with some big DJ,
there's another question from the community. When are you going to dig out those samplers to do a track with Nightmare, because he was a musician at one point? I'm just kidding. I threw that one in there.
I'd love that. That would be cool. The crazy thing is, back when I was doing it, I had to buy, a sampler. Well, now, of course, you fire up Reason or whatever it is, and you've got like this crazy amount of kit all in software. And it's also can be overwhelming, can't it? It's too much. And so it's amazing the stuff you can do now just with a computer. But back in the day, it was like I had to buy that hardware to, it was like a mono sampler. I think it's fascinating to me that, and I've got Reason, on my machine there. And
we could, I don't know where the middle ground is here. UK grime, drum and bass. So we can make something happen, Brendan. We're gonna have to connect the DMs after this, but it correlates almost to me when I think about it with the AI discussion, right? Yeah. With things becoming more accessible and ubiquitous, with platforms like SoundCloud allowing more people to publish. sure, there's a flood of material, but with that, we're getting to hear voices that we may never have been able to hear otherwise. And I think that that's a worthwhile endeavor, to go through more material, to try to parse through and find stuff, to be able to hear those voices. And we're glad that you are one of those voices, Brendan. And so again, Collisions just dropped 1 p.m. today, MakersPlace. These auctions are live. I think even the title now, having this discussion we just had the past few minutes, has more meaning to me, right? Multifaceted with what you're doing with your art. I love it. Brendan, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Any parting words for the community out there?
No, just if you've been making art, just keep at it. It's easy to get distracted by other people and their seeming success. But try and become and it's hard, but try and just concentrate on you and becoming, as I think Frank Gehry said, become an expert in you. That's what you need to concentrate on. But I'm not saying that's easy, by the way, because it's easy to go, oh wow, this person did an amazing thing, and why do I even bother? But so yeah, but keep at it, but stay. The main thing is make an enemy of envy. Is a great quote I read somewhere. I think Jerry Saltz said it. Make an enemy of envy, and then just concentrate on trying to be, improve every day.
Awesome. Well, Brendan, again, thank you so much for spending time with us. We'll watch this drop. Can't wait to see how you succeed here with this, and looking forward to seeing all the new things that you have on deck for the near future. Have a great one.
You too, and thanks Nightmare, and thanks Mongoose. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, and thanks everyone for listening.
Take care.
Bye.